Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. This week, Shawn Busse, Paul Downs, and Laura Zander talk about why 2023 was so challenging for them and what they plan to do differently in 2024. Last year was a year when I knew I was going to be making a bunch of investments and didn't expect to show much or any of a profit, says Paul. And I absolutely nailed that goal. Shawn, meanwhile, thinks his new marketing scheme is working. And Laura is addressing her issues by going shopping. Shopping, that is, for businesses. She's now bought a total of 6, and she offers a step-by-step guide to how even a relatively small business can grow through acquisition, including what she's looking for, mostly companies in distress, how she sets a price, she aims to recoup her cash outlay pretty quickly, how she finances the deals, not with a bank, and how she integrates her old and new operations. That can be a bear. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations, brought to you by our principal sponsor, The Great Game of Business, will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. Same thing with our daily newsletter, the 21 Hats Morning Report, which Inc. magazine named the best newsletter for business owners and which you can subscribe to for free at 21hats.com, where you can also find transcripts of our podcast episodes and lots of other articles and interviews. Joining me this week on the podcast are regulars Shawn Busse, CEO of Kinesis, which is based in Portland, Oregon, and works with small businesses on marketing, culture, and strategy. Paul Downs, CEO of Paul Downs Cabinet Makers, which is based outside of Philadelphia and makes custom conference tables. And Laura Zander, who is CEO of Jimmy Bean's Wool, a digital yarn store based in Reno, Nevada, and Madeline Tosh, a yarn manufacturer and distributor based in Fort Worth, Texas. The episode is titled, New Year's Resolution? Make some money. Welcome, Shawn, Paul, and Laura. It's great to have you here for our first conversation of 2024. I want to start today by asking you some basic questions just to get a sense of where your heads are at as we head into the new year. For starters, did any of you make resolutions?
No.
I did.
What did you resolve, Paul?
I want to make a lot more money this year.
Seriously. Can I piggyback on yours?
Yeah, no, but the context was last year was a year when I knew I was going to be making a bunch of investments and didn't expect to show much or any of a profit, and I absolutely nailed that goal.
Congratulations.
And this year, now I want to see some payback on that. So I'm going to be concentrating more on cost cutting and efficiency and making sure that we're profitable all the way through.
Are you thinking about achieving that more by efficiency and cost cutting or by growth?
Growth. And the thing is that we did a bunch of sort of projects, expensive projects, and had one change to our basic fixed costs in 2023. The change was just that my rent went up because we renewed our lease and then took over another 15,000 square feet. So my rent bill went from about 11 grand a month to 23 grand a month.
Ooh.
Wow.
And that's a significant jump, but it's still much, much cheaper than trying to move into a different facility. So whatever the difference is there, let's say call that $130,000. And then we bought a new spray booth and put it into service, and that was about a $140,000 project. And then all the marketing and new website I did, let's call that $100 grand. So whatever that is, almost $400,000. Now we're going to show an accrued loss of about $100 grand. So we would have been in pretty good shape if I hadn't done those things. But those are the things I needed to do to get to the next level in the next few years.
How much space do you have, Paul?
Right now, about 45,000 square feet.
Would you say $23,000 a month?
Yeah, it's still cheap.
Paul, I'm curious because I was listening to Lauren's recap episode, and one of those shows was you talking about your two salespeople, and the one who was drastically outperforming the other one, and the other one who was you were not sure about his future.
Well, in September, I believe, I brought the underperforming one into my office and gave him a formal write-up saying, what you're doing is not acceptable and your job is in danger. And told him that I actually didn't want to fire him, but I would. And neither of us would be better off the day I do that. So get your shit together, more or less. And he agreed to do that. And he did.
Wow.
And he turned it around. And the last 3 months of the year, he was selling at a pretty good pace.
Wow.
And then yesterday, he came into my office and told me he was leaving.
Oh, you're kidding.
Oh, no.
Oh, at least...
So everybody's a winner in this scenario, I guess.
Sorry to hear that,
but,
Paul.
Oh, man.
It's forced me to confront something that I should have confronted a long time ago, which is that of all the different types of employees we have, and we have shop floor people, we have finishers, we have logistics guys, we have engineers, we have project managers, I've been able to successfully hire when I needed to for all those positions. And I've never even tried to replace either of my 2 sales guys. And I knew I needed to supplement them sometime this year because we do anticipate more inquiries coming in and just need more horsepower to do it. So the thing I've been putting off and dreading and avoiding has now been dumped in my lap, and it's just time to put on my big boy pants and figure out how to hire a salesperson.
The other reason you did not want to have to fire him, you told us when we spoke about this over the summer, I think, was that you were acutely aware that if he was gone, you would have to take on his responsibilities until you did find somebody. Is that what's happening?
Yep. I still got him for another 6 weeks or so.
Oh, that's good.
And he's leaving to open up a franchise, a tree care franchise, which is sort of a risky move in my mind, but everybody's business idea sounds like a risky move to me. So he's a good guy, and he's done a difficult job for 11 years, and it's fairly easy to get burned out on sales. And so I don't fault him, and I just wish him the best. And yeah, I'm going to have to jump in and do his job, but that will certainly incentivize me to figure out a way to replace him as quickly as possible.
How about you, Shawn? Any resolutions?
Yeah, I've never been a big resolution guy. I mean, the data shows it's not a very effective strategy. So like Paul, I would like to make some freaking money this year. That would be great. Last year was just the worst year on record for us. And so, outperforming that, I should be able to do it.
Wow.
It was tough. Yeah, it was really tough. I think the Fed's push on interest rates has had this sort of like wet blanket effect on everything. And, we felt it, just a lot of slow decision making in the buying process. A lot of folks, him and Han, dragging their feet. Yeah, so I think they're done jacking up interest rates. I think they're going to start to go down. But yeah, I would like to see more opportunities. One thing that has changed is, our marketing and business development strategy is just totally different now than it was. Yeah.
I was going to ask you about that, Shawn. In the fall, the last time we talked about this, you told us about your 100-day March strategy of getting your people out of the office and making connections and trying to drive business that way. Have the 100 days passed? And how's it going?
Let's see. We have 4 days left. So it's going great. It's been a wildly successful effort. I couldn't be more delighted. Yeah.
What worked? Tell us.
Well, so, prior to this initiative, for folks who don't listen to every show, most of business development was on my shoulders. And then I had a person about a year ago who, like Paul, left. They were kind of like one of my key salespeople. And replacing her was very difficult. I really wasn't able to do it. So we just re-examined how we did business development, and we realized that we can't just have it on the shoulders of 1 or 2 people in the company, that we need to really have multiple people in the company active out in the community. So yeah, we've just really activated the team, and folks are doing different things, participating in nonprofits, volunteering, going to networking events, just being far more active.
Hey, Shawn.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, what metrics do you kind of put on your people? Do they report to you weekly? Do they report monthly, quarterly? I really struggle with how to manage and assess people who have indiscrete roles, like creative and marketing.
Yeah. So this initiative of getting people active in the community is newer. And so at this point, I don't have individual metrics for folks to hit, but we do have a collective metric. So we were trying to have 100 meaningful conversations in 100 days, essentially asking for referrals. And, we were really close to hitting that number. And I think my quote unquote mistake was I set this initiative right smack dab in the holiday season. So it's really tough to get people's attention. But nevertheless, we did, and with those, we hit about 75 conversations that yielded 42 referrals, that yielded 4 new clients. I'm just looking at my dashboard here. And then that resulted in probably $400,000 in new revenue in the coming year.
Wow.
Yeah. So for a company of our size, we're just a little under 2 million.
Yeah.
That's a huge, and then we had a meeting yesterday that could be another $150,000.
Wow.
So yeah, I think we'll get at least $500,000 in new business as a result of this effort.
God, it's too bad you didn't do it earlier. Just kidding.
What happens when the 100 days end, Shawn?
No.
Are you going to continue this?
We keep going. We got to keep going. And that's, I think, to Laura's point, I think we need to start to have individual goals.
Yeah.
Not everybody needs to do the kind of level that I'm doing or some other kind of people in my organization, especially since some of these folks are servicing clients. So, we'll find the right balance there.
Yeah. Or a cadence, is it 5 conversations a month or 10 conversations a month?
Yeah. I think the real challenge, Laura, in a business like ours, and I can't really speak to yours, but you talk about these like intangible roles, of measuring people's performance.
Yeah.
So much of the success of a business like ours is a collaborative effect. It's not just one person, it's multiple inputs and variables. So I found, at least in my business, activating people around a shared goal tends to be more effective than like one-to-one. And it's more like you can take a basketball team and look at one star and go, I need you to score 50 baskets in the next game. Or you can look at the whole team and be like, we're going to win. And I tend to think the latter is a little more effective for our team and the culture we've built.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. My team does really well with like a super hard goal like that, but they don't do as well as I would like, with higher level goals, that aren't quite as discreet. If we say, okay, I need you to go make $200,000 or whatever, like then the whole team comes together. They know their part. They know they're going to battle. Like they figure it out. They work it out together. But then as soon as that goal is over, and if we're like, okay, well, for the year, this is the goal, they can't really figure out how to get there.
Yeah.
On the sales and marketing side. Jay and I have had so many conversations about this, and that's, like my struggle. And do you get frustrated, like before you set this 100-day goal or 100 conversations goal? Is there a moment of frustration where you're like, why do I have to figure this out? Why can't you guys just figure this out yourself?
Yeah.
Like, it's not that complicated. Have meaningful conversations.
I don't know. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt that everybody has good intentions and not everybody is a business development expert. So I have to have a little bit of grace and, kind of see how it goes. And some people clearly are like not good at it. And so part of our reset in the coming year is to identify, okay, how can you contribute to this effort if you're an introvert?
Yes.
And so that gets us thinking about things like content,
Sure.
Oh, you're a great writer. So let's get you, creating content or other ways you can contribute to empower those who are having those business development conversations.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Before we get to Laura's big news, I just want to run through a couple other quick questions with you guys. We know Paul's hiring a salesperson. Are any of you making other hires?
Yeah, I think I am. And this goes, if you want to recap last year, it sounds like I had a very similar experience to Shawn and to Paul. This was one of the worst years that we've had. On the Reno Jimmy Bean side, we did end up hitting our sales goals, but we hit them in very low margin areas. And so we ended up losing money. So, the team drove towards the goals, but didn't. So yes, they did a great job and they drove towards the goals, but it's easy to sell stuff at half off, right?
I'm a little surprised to hear that because you had told us that you had kind of altered your business model to try to improve your margins by focusing on selling stuff with higher margins.
Yep.
Why didn't that work out the way you hoped?
Yep. That's a great question, Lauren. That's a really great question. And that's where I've been struggling this year. In Q1, our sales were way down. And on the manufacturing side, we figured out why. It was because we had a person who was tasked with reaching out to every one of our customers and checking in and making sure they were doing okay and, blah, blah, blah. And they didn't do it. And we didn't know. They kept telling us that they were doing it and they were doing it and they didn't. So we solved that. We fixed it. We found out what was going on. But then on the Jimmy Bean side, our sales were down and that team collapsed. And I think just kind of froze. And we had a lot of emotional issues, a lot of crying from a lot of different people, over a period of 6 months. So we hired somebody really high level to come in and to help. And it turned out that this person was a thinker and a strategist and not as much of a doer. And, it just caused a lot of friction. And so, this year has just been a mess. It was just a mess. The most emotionally exhausting year that we've had since 2016. So back to why didn't we get the margin that we had thought? Well, when our sales were down hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands, obviously that affected our cash flow. And this is my fault. I had forecasted and budgeted and everything based on sales goals that we had all committed to in high margin areas. And when we found out that some things weren't being done to drive those sales goals, the team pivoted. We needed cash. So I don't know if you guys are familiar, but Section 174 of the tax law wasn't revoked or, went back into effect. And so our tax bill ended up being double. We needed to put a ton into hundreds of thousands into our tax bill unexpectedly.
Is this the R&D provision?
It is.
This, oh man, that is such a, anyway, maybe you could explain that a little bit more.
If I understood it better, I probably could. In essence, so for the last 5 years or 8 years or something like that, we get an R&D credit. We're a manufacturer, right? And we're a software company. So we're developing our own software. So we have hundreds of thousands of dollars each year that there's a percentage of that we spend on R&D. So it's salaries, it's testing, it's sampling, all these things. So hundreds of thousands of dollars that are eligible for this R&D credit. And then there's, I think a percentage of that we get a actual tax credit each year.
It's really hard because it's a credit. A lot of people don't understand a credit. It's dollar for dollar as opposed to a deduction. So it's all of a sudden you get this massive tax bill that you didn't see coming. Who's your tax advisor? Because this has been known for a while.
So we had a bit of a heads up, but we didn't realize it was that big. And there was always, fingers crossed and hope that it was going to go away and it was not going to be a problem. But fair point, it would have been great to have more notice. So we needed cash. So the team did put together let's do $200,000 in sales this weekend or whatever it was, and put a bunch of stuff on and get rid of some inventory at really low margin or no margin at all. So that was one big hit. And then the other way that we still hit our sales goal was to hold these retreats. So we do 2 annual retreats right now. So we've got, 300 people that come and visit us between the 2 retreats. They pay, thousands of dollars, but we basically make no money on them. In a good year, if we're doing well, we'll make maybe 10 or 20% on it, after the cost of food and the travel and all that kind of stuff. But this year, the contract that we had signed with the hotel for the food and beverage, we made the mistake apparently of not locking in those prices. And so the estimate and the figure that we were charging our customers was based on the previous year's food and beverage costs. And they went up 30%. And that was a big number. That's again, $100,000, $50,000, $100,000 difference. So, you're talking about in the retreats, I mean, we could do $400,000 or $500,000 worth of sales and we made no money on it, at the end of the day, or very, very little. It certainly wasn't the high margin stuff that we're looking for by doing manufacturing. So we had a couple big hits where, again, we hit our sales goal, but at the end of the day, our cost of goods and our gross margin was just significantly different than it was the last 2 years. And then, kind of what happened is as the shit's hitting the fan and I'm seeing that we're not hitting our sales goals, in Q1 and Q2, I start to dig. Well, and it turns out that our sales coming from our social media channels are down about $300,000. And our marketing manager didn't tell us, and she knew.
Do you know why that happened, Laura? What changed?
No, I do not. Yeah, it's a sensitive subject right now. So, I'm digging into that. I'm digging into looking at our traffic compared to our competitors' traffic. And we have a competitor that's only been around for a few years, maybe 5 or 8 years, and their traffic is starting to exceed ours. And I'm just like, nobody's watching this, and it is somebody's job to watch that. And it wasn't being watched. And I didn't realize, I'm not looking at that information. And so, Shawn, that's where I was kind of asking, like, metrics wise, and, how much do you look at that? And
I mean, it seems like you would want to, because you're so heavy with, direct sales and so forth, you would want to have a dashboard with just a few key numbers on it that your manager is responsible for and talking to you about on at least a monthly basis, I would think.
Well, great point. So we have basically the two companies, right? We've got the one in Texas and we have the one in Nevada. In Texas, I have a team of 4 people that report to me, right? And so we meet every other week. I have one-on-ones once a month. I've got, a pretty clean dashboard, that I look at. But in Nevada, I have one person that reports to me. I have a general manager, and her job is to manage all of these teams, right? And so they do have these dashboards, and she sees all these dashboards. But I've been so focused on the Texas business for the last 4 years that I've just been hands off, so it's just turned into this kind of mess because I've been hands off, but then all of a sudden I go over and I'm like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, oh my God, this is down and this is down and this is down. And then that doesn't go over really well.
Sounds like good management to me.
Yeah. You were inspired by that?
Yeah, I tried the Sopranos approach. I'm like,
flip some tables over,
Yeah, exactly. I'm watching Slow Horses right now. I'm just like, that's who I want to be. You guys are idiots. Like, you're so dumb.
Oh my God.
But then they rally behind him. It works for him.
I don't know. I've seen the outcome of that show. It's not.
I'm just kidding. I am totally kidding.
Yeah, I read all the books, so you don't want to be there.
No.
So, Laura, all of that makes your news of the day a little more surprising, I think.
Yes.
Given that background, you have chosen to address it by going out and buying another business, correct?
We bought 2.
Tell us more, Laura.
Yep. Let's go shopping. I'm not going to do drugs. I'm not drinking anymore. So, we'll just go shop and gamble.
What did you do?
So actually what I did was when sales were down this summer, I decided to put a bunch of money on building a certain product for our team at Jimmy Bean's. So really diving into clubs. So I went and hired some extra people. I'm like, if we can get a certain number of subscribers, then this solves all of our problems. We calculated everything. We did it. We're making it profitable.
Wait, what do you mean by clubs? What are you doing?
Like subscriptions, so somebody pays $30 a month and they get a box from us, that's got some yarn and a pattern and
you have different clubs, meaning different types of products that go.
Exactly. Yes. Like you could knit a shawl. There's a shawl club and then there's a blanket club.
Okay. So this is your recurring revenue model.
Yes. So put a bunch of money and effort into that, and it didn't turn out the way that we had hoped it would turn out. It's better than it has been in the past, but it wasn't the panacea. It didn't solve everything. So at the same time, there's a brand that we used to carry that went out of business last January. And in fact, we hired 2 of their employees, and that's gone really, really well. So finally was able to convince the owner of that business to let us buy the rights to their brand. And we did that in December. So bought the rights to their brand, relaunched that brand, under the Texas side of things, and have already paid for, just cash, not profitable, but, have already doubled what we paid for the business. So when? It was very little work, something because I already had 2 of their employees. They already knew everything about the brand. It was something that there was a lot of brand loyalty out there. And then I had somebody come.
Laura, if I could stop you for 1 second just to make sure it's clear. Your Texas brand is a manufacturer. You make Madeline Tosh yarn. It's a high-end yarn, I believe you've told us.
It is.
And your acquisition here is another brand that you're going to make.
Yes.
You're going to make it in Texas at the Madeline Tosh factory, or?
Not the Shibui one. So the Shibui one that we just bought comes from it's already dyed, and we get it from a mill in Japan. So basically, what we've decided to do is Jimmy Beans is one thing. So we're going to handle that in another way. But on the Madeline Tosh side, the Texas side, we have decided to form the Maddie Tosh Group, which is a wholesale distribution and manufacturing group of brands. So now that contains Madeline Tosh, which we manufacture in Texas. It contains Simply Shetland, for which we're the North American distributor of that brand in Shetland. It now contains this Shibui brand. We do the creative side, and it's our brand.
This is the one you just bought?
This is the one we bought in December, yes. So that comes from Japan, so that's kind of a pass-through. And then we just bought 4 days ago another manufacturing hand-dyed company that's in Tucson, Arizona. And we're going to move that brand and that manufacturing to Texas this month. So now, because we already have, we've already got a space, we already have a kitchen, we already have, we've already got all of the bones and everything that we need. We've got this brand called Dream in Color, which can go through the same processes that Madeline Tosh goes through, but it's different yarns, it's different colors, we'll have different dyers. But we've decided to expand the Texas business and the wholesale arm of our business by creating a group that has multiple different wholesale brands, with the goal of being in every yarn shop in the country. So we're doubling down on the wholesale side of the business as opposed to the Jimmy Beans direct-to-consumer side of the business.
Wow.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to wholesale to your big competitor?
Yeah, we do. They're one of our best customers.
Sounds like a good strategy.
Yeah, so now we went from the brand that we bought a couple days ago, this Dream in Color. They have 414 customers. Only 165 of those are crossover with Madeline Tosh. So these are 2 different hand-dyed products. So, imagine 2 different brands of jeans.
Laura, when you say customers, you're referring to retail shops?
Retail shops, yeah. And then Jimmy Beans obviously is a customer and is probably going to be the biggest customer of all of these brands in the Maddie Tosh group. So that's where we're hoping, we get a little of the extra margin bump.
So Laura, at a certain point, I think we heard you resolve that you were not going to buy any more businesses. You were already concerned about the time and the strain and the travel. How are you thinking about those things now?
That's a great question. On the Tosh side of things, on the Texas side of things, the team, it's taken 4 years, but the team is so solid and so strong that I basically don't have to do anything.
Are you not going to Fort Worth as regularly as you were before?
I'm still going once a month, but not like every other week like I was before. So no, I don't have to go nearly as often as I did. And now the customer service team, they're just taking over. I have a team. So, it's almost like this is the way it's supposed to be. We do this acquisition. We have a transition team. Carrie's taking on the customer service side of it. Julie's taking on this. Luke's taking on this. Ophelia's doing this. And bam, all I had to do was pay the bills, and I'm involved, but I'm not responsible for day-to-day tasks. before I do these, we ask everybody, we're like, do you guys want to do this? Can we handle it? Are you guys okay with it? How is this going to look? And they all want to do it. They want to grow. So as a result of doing this, a couple people got promotions and they're able to take on more and do more stuff. So yeah, so it'll grow the business a couple million this year.
But as you said to us before, you're still kind of struggling with unresolved issues, it sounds like, from last year, maybe mostly at Jimmy Bean's, and now you've added a lot more on top of that.
Exactly.
Would you say that the acquisitions are you making them despite the ongoing issues that you've had, or as a response to them?
Probably a little of both. What I have discovered and accepted, I guess, is that these two businesses, Texas versus Nevada, are completely separate businesses. They just are. I've tried to merge them together. I've tried to leverage, social media knowledge. Let's just have one person that understands social media and advertising and can help all of the businesses and all the brands. And it hasn't worked. It doesn't work. So the Texas side of the business is very healthy right now and has a very healthy team, and they want to grow. So these acquisitions are going to help them grow, both personally and professionally and all that kind of stuff. So the Nevada side of the business, that is the one that we need some new strategy and need some new help and all that. So it's almost like I've given the Texas team some stuff to work on, and now I can spend this next year really focused on the Nevada side of the business. And you asked, is anybody thinking about hiring anybody? And yes, I'm looking at a very high-level strategy person that can handle the sales and the marketing. So that everything is not falling on my one general manager. We've realized that it's just too much for her.
What's the size of that business, Laura?
It's about 8 million, 8.5.
Okay. That's a pretty good size thing for one person. Especially if they're surrounded by junior people.
And that's what, we've been talking about for years, is that she just doesn't have a strong enough team. They're more middle managers. They're not, leadership team they're just not at the same level. And so she has to do a lot of the stuff.
Is there something keeping you from pulling that business back over to Texas and just sort of creating some consolidation and cultural efficiency and all that sort of stuff? Or is it like, nope, too big, too much, got to keep it in Nevada?
It's so funny that you would say that because, for years, the thought was the reverse. Like, should we bring the Texas business to Nevada? Because Texas was really struggling, but we finally, it all comes down to just having the right people.
Yeah.
So now we have the right operations manager in Texas. She's been there for over a year and she's killing it. And that just makes everything easier. So no, they're two very, very different businesses. I mean, and that I think is another kind of moment of enlightenment that I had this year, was that I think I was trying to mix these two businesses too much. And one of them is, the Texas business, it's manufacturing, it's just, it's creation, it's product development, and it's distribution, and it's wholesaling. And the Jimmy Bean's business is an e-commerce business, with a retail arm.
Yeah.
And I was confusing the two. We had too much product development going on in the Jimmy Bean stuff, and I think I was just spreading everybody too thin.
I mean, just the difference in B2C versus B2B, it's so dramatic.
Yeah.
The type of behaviors and how people think and all that stuff. It's not that you can't combine those. It's just different.
Yeah.
Shawn or Paul, is either of you inspired to go out and buy a business by this?
Not today.
I have zero interest in buying businesses. It strikes me. Hats off to you, Laura. I mean, it's an impressive thing that you've done over and over again. Combining cultures and getting people on the same page and having a clear vision. Sounds really hard.
Oh, it's my favorite. I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do. Wait,
you're not being sarcastic.
No.
You love doing it. It just doesn't always work the way you'd like it to.
I mean, we've been, knock on wood, we've been successful with each of the ones that we've done.
Well, you're successful in the sense that Madeline Tosh was a mess and is now, hitting on all cylinders. But you did say that you've struggled a little bit to combine the businesses and make them, more efficient.
Absolutely. That was the big mistake, was thinking that it was all one company. I mean, it is all one legal entity, but it's not one company. It needs to be two separate. I've got a wholesale business and I've got an e-commerce business. And the e-commerce business is a customer of the wholesale business. And so making that really clear, that makes all the difference in the world. But you're right. I mean, that's been the part that, it's been really, really hard. We've bought distressed businesses. The one that we just bought in Tucson, it's not distressed, but it's not like it's growing gangbusters. I mean, it's two women who have had this business for 15 years. They've worked together for 30 years and had different businesses. And one of them wants to retire and the other one wants to move on to something else. And, if we didn't buy it, it would go away. And that's very exciting to me. It's very rewarding to be able to take something, and our goal this month is just not to fuck it up. That's it. I'm like, that's it. That's our only goal this month, is let's just not screw it up. Let's try not to lose any customers.
Are those founders going to remain active in the business at all?
They are. They're going to help. And this will be the first time that we've done it this way. But they're on contract to help us for the next 12 months, to be kind of advisors. And so it's very exciting.
I have a question. So you just talked about buying businesses as if you went and bought a car one day. And I have heard similar stories in my Vistage group. And I personally find the thought of buying a business to be quite complex and scary. How complicated is it to buy your average small struggling mom and pop? What do you have to do? Can you walk us through the steps?
Yeah, it's actually one of my favorite parts. And now that how many times have I done it? 4, 5, 6. It's starting to become just kind of second nature. I mean, so for me, I'm buying a small, or like a struggling, as you said, a mom and pop. So these rules are very different than if we were going to go buy some strategic thing and we're paying like 10 times EBITDA or blah, blah, blah. So depending on the size of the business and how long I've worked with them and how familiar I am, one, they're all in our industry. So there's a lot of stuff I don't have to learn because I already know it, right? I mean, I know how hand-dyed yarn works. I know what the margins should look like. I know how much their cost of goods should be. I know how much advertising should be. So typically what I do, we have a conversation. I have already kind of done some due diligence on the brand. We go and we do some research on, have these guys open their mouths in really bad ways? Are they serial killers? Are they, like super right-wing fascists? Have they done something that has damaged the brand in some way? So we put some feelers out and we talk to people and we do some social media research just to make sure they haven't like created anything really inflammatory.
Which is a bigger problem in the knitting world than some might think, correct?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a big problem. So they've got to be clean, I guess, have a clean reputation and not be too far polarized on, one side or the other. And then I go into the financials. So I get their financials for the last 3 years, sometimes more. And then I throw those into, a spreadsheet. And first of all, most of these businesses in our industry either aren't profitable or are relatively, 5%. It's not like some huge kind of profit margin. So I take a look at everything. And the first thing I do, what I did in this case is I put together 2 different scenarios in the spreadsheet. One is if somebody off of the street were to buy this business, which ones of these expenses need to stay? So rent, they're going to need to, pay rent. Salaries, they're going to need to get insurance. They're going to need to get all this, blah, blah, blah. So if somebody off the street were to come in, buy this business, this is what the profitability of this business would look like. And then I do another scenario of, if we buy it, what does this look like? Well, we're already paying rent, so we don't have to pay any additional rent. We already have insurance, so we're not going to have to pay any additional insurance. Blah, 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 right down the line. And then I look at the profitability if we buy it. And then I talk to them and I just kind of say, look, like here are the 2 different versions of what profitability looks like. And the value of the company is based on these 2 versions. If I was a real asshole, I would probably press. I probably am a real asshole, but if I was more of a jerk, I would probably press and say, look, if I were just somebody walking off the street, the value of your business is very low because it's not really profitable. But we have all of these things and can scale, so why don't we meet in the middle somewhere? So, then I make them an offer and I say, look, here's the math. Here's how much I think the business is worth. And it usually is, can I pay this back in 2 to 3 years? So you take whatever that net profit number is and I multiply it times 2, 2.5, somewhere around there, kind of depending on, has the business been growing? Has it been shrinking? Is it stable? And what that looks like. So then, we talk about that. We're like, okay, does that work for you? We go through that process. Once we've settled on a number that we feel comfortable with, then we write a letter of intent and say, okay, we're serious. Like, we will buy this from you for this price. We talk about timing. And then we go into, quote unquote, due diligence. And that's where, okay, now, after we've signed, obviously, a confidentiality agreement, like early on, then it's, okay, now send me your customer lists. Now send me, your more detailed books so that I can really look through this. And this is where the trust comes in. How much due diligence do you need to do? I mean, how well do you know this company? So if they send me their customer lists, it's not hard for me because I know our industry to validate or verify, that their customer list is accurate and they're not just blowing smoke up my ass. So, and then I just do, like in this case, I went around to a bunch of yarn shops and I go look and I see, are they carrying this product? Where do they have it displayed in the store? How do they feel about this product? Blah, blah, blah. And I do it kind of quietly. How do they feel about the owners? So then, once I do all the due diligence and I feel comfortable, then, we put a purchase sale agreement together and run it by our lawyers. And then that's that. Then I wire some money over.
Okay, that was great. Thank you. But I have a couple follow-up questions. What does the lawyer/accountant team look like that's backing you up while you're doing this?
So my accountants, I send the LOI. So once I've got that in place, I send that over to my accountants and I say, look, 1, do you see any red flags? 2, can you give me any advice on this? And they tell me the same thing every time, right? Let's say I pay $100 for the business. They're going to say as much as you can get, as much as you can pay for assets versus goodwill, the way you split it across affects whether or not you can expense it immediately or if you've got to expense it over a number of years. Because these numbers are relatively small, I don't sweat it too much. Like I would rather have a good deal and have good relationships with the sellers. So there's that back and forth. And obviously the seller wants, their accountant is telling them to do it one way and the buyer, their accountant is telling us to do it the other way, exactly the opposite way. So you just have to find something in the middle. So I send the LOI over to the accountant, ask for any advice, let them know, because then obviously it's got to go on the balance sheet. So it's actually pretty light.
Okay, so you don't have to involve a bank. You don't have to borrow money to do any of this. And you're just doing it, I can write a check for these businesses. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, it is the one we bought in Texas. We were going to get a loan. So we did go through that loan process, and it's exhaustive.
That was an SBA kind of loan?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And they need to see, obviously, all the financials of the business we're buying, all of our financials, da-da-da-da-da. So what we've ended up just doing is using our line of credit or getting a PayPal loan instead. So
what are we talking about order of magnitude? That most of these businesses can be purchased for less than $100,000, less than $500,000, less than $1 million?
Less than $500,000.
Okay.
Yeah. So 6 figures.
Yeah, I imagine introducing the bank creates all kind of problems because you're buying these businesses that on paper are losing money. So
exactly.
The bank doesn't want to do that. No. Even though you see the vision for it, know how to make it work. Yeah.
Yeah. So if there are other ways to get the money, I mean, yes, I understand it's better to use somebody else's money, but it's also a pain in the ass.
How does the PayPal loan work? Is that a high rate?
I think, no, I don't think Doug would know. He does that. I don't think it's as high of a rate as you would expect, but you got to pay it back pretty quickly. I mean, we pay it back within 2 or 3 months. We're not keeping these loans forever. So, I mean, it's the old school way of doing things. Like if you can't pay cash, don't buy it.
And how long does a transaction like this usually take?
2 or 3 months.
Probably they don't have options, right? I mean, you're a lifeline. They don't have options, I'm guessing. right?
Yeah. I mean, that's how it's turned out.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's kind of what we have become.
Because these businesses were probably founded by baby boomers or Gen X or older Gen Xers. So they're like, there's not a buyer.
There's not a buyer. They're too small, for like a big company. And there's a lot of consolidation in our industry right now. So they're too small for a big company, and they're really too big for most people.
It also sounds like there's rarely or never real estate involved. Like these are just retail operations. So rent's over with, the lease is over. You just close the doors. You're done.
Yeah. And what I've found, Paul, is let's take this one that we're handling right now. We're moving locations. We're moving it from Arizona to Texas. And that is going to be messy. This month is going to be messy.
Is there a basic problem with deciding what state the transaction happens in?
That's a great question. I've just always kind of done them in Nevada because that's what our LLC is in.
Okay. All right. Well, this has been a great overview because I have opportunities to purchase companies that are sort of like what you're talking about, except there's more equipment and inventory and often real estate. But I've just been so terrified by the whole process that it would just be too complicated, and I'm already stretched thin. So what do you think is the magic ingredient on your side that gives you the resources to devote yourself to these transactions?
I don't know. I just like it.
But you've got somebody else doing a lot of the things that your business does.
Yes, exactly.
Like how much free management headspace as a percentage is required to consider doing this?
Well, to do the transaction itself, that's 100% me.
Mm-hmm.
Or I should say 95% me. But then down the line, now because we've done, each one that we do, I participate less and less, in the transitions. Because now I've got a team that has gone through it as well, and they know what's coming. So I am actually not participating a ton at all. But the very first one I did and the second one I did, I was 100% in. That was my full-time job for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Laura, I'm curious. I think the first and second one you did, if I'm not mistaken, were overseas, China and Vietnam, maybe?
Yeah. Yep.
Which makes me wonder, what's messy about moving Tucson to Fort Worth? I gather there are no employees. The owners are going to... Oh, there are employees.
Yeah,
okay.
They're employees. And the production is done. So with China and Vietnam, the production is still done in China and Vietnam. We didn't change that. It was just the creative side.
I see.
But in this case, the production is actually done in Arizona. So we need to train our team in Texas while still having the team in Arizona produce for a little while. So it's just a lot of moving parts.
Got it. Well, guys, I didn't get to all my questions, I'm sorry to say, but they'll make another episode. My thanks to Shawn Busse, Paul Downs, and Laura Zander, and to our sponsor, The Great Game of Business, which helps businesses use an open book management system to build healthier companies. You can learn more at greatgame.com. Thanks, everybody. Wait, don't leave yet. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like the 21 Hats owners to address, send it to me by replying to your morning report or by email at lauren@21hats.com. That's LOREN @21hats.com. Do it now before you forget. And don't be afraid to tell Jay what you really think. He can take it. And if you got something out of this conversation, help us reach more business owners. Tell a friend. Subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to the Morning Report at 21hats.com. This episode was produced by Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Okay, now you can leave. Thanks for listening, everyone.